Now, despite inflation being a global problem, that's a fact. More workers are now planning to go on strike, with nurses, teachers and Royal Mail staff all threatening industrial action over pay rises. So given the pressures on workers, is the 10% pension even increase crazy? I'm really strong on this. Isabel, you start, though. I really am strong.
I have just this weird sensation of actually agreeing with the government on this one.
It's not weird.
Well, I can see why they've done it, you see. I mean, actually, the pension is not a king's ransom. If you actually look and see how much people are getting for their pension, I think it's less than £200 a week. So, you know, many pensioners are really struggling. There's a kind of misconception that the grey vote, you know, they've all had it too good. But there are a large number of people for whom this autumn and winter is a real source of fear. And the government does not want headlines about old people dying.
I think also, just going to say, you know, the older generation, that's where we are. That's why we're where we are. They can't go and get a second job.
Exactly.
They can't go and do overtime.
Yeah.
And for me, personally, whether the striking railway people and the teachers who get 19 weeks holiday anyway, whether they get upset, I think we should look after the vulnerable and the old, many of whom won't be able to heat their homes this year, and many die because of that. And I think it's really important we look after the older generation.
And I really think you've hit the nail on the head. What else are they meant to do? It's not as if they can get a part-time job doing something else. They certainly can't go for the bank of mum and dad.
60 quid anyway?
They haven't got anyone to help them or sub them. But I've had calls from pensioners who have already turned the heating off. I know it's warm at the moment, but turned it off several months ago, because these are people, proud people, dignified people, who've never been in debt in their lives, never. And they are scared stiff. And I actually have one particular listener who's heating up water and putting it in thermos flasks and washing down with it rather than, you know, put the boiler on and this kind of thing. I mean, people of an advanced age who should be leading a dignified life, having a dreadful time of it. And I think the government's going down the right path.
Don't you think we should protect the older generation?
I think we must know different pensioners. Most of the pensioners I know are doing all right. Like, they're off on their 15th Viking River cruise of the year.
No,
there's a two-speed thing with pensioners. When we grew up, it was a word that naturally meant a vulnerable word. It evoked images of people with little resources. I think that there are, as Vanessa rightly says, there are pensioners that are really struggling now. But what this will mean is a blanket increase across the board for people that have done well out of property, out of final salary pensions. I'm really surprised that the government, they're kind of like doing boundaries and means testing for certain things. I think this increase needs to be factored across people who have means and across people who don't.
I agree, because if we're going to ring-fence pensions for pensioners and increase them along the lines of inflation, which I think is right, because a lot of pensioners are vulnerable, but there's a lot of people who are also working, wages aren't increasing, who are struggling as well. And I think those people need to be helped too. But
where's the money coming from? Big question as ever. Where's
any of it?
One second. She has said that rich pensioners should give back the payment if they don't want it.
Well, that's obviously absurd. No one ever does that.
And they're not going to.
That's like the 200 quid heating thing. I do agree in principle, but I think we were talking about those pensioners who have frankly worked all their lives and look at what's going on now and see that people can come into this country on not work and seemingly on benefits get more than people who have grafted all their life.
I'm not saying that pensioners shouldn't get it at all. I'm not saying that in any way, shape or form, and especially pensioners who are vulnerable. But there's vulnerable people across the country in all age groups who are going to wonder why they are being left to suffer.
But what about young people at the moment? I mean, there is an element of this, the optics of it, because we've got a generation of young people that have gone through a credit crunch, a Brexit, and a pandemic, and there doesn't seem to be anything specific for them. And I think this is a real problem for both parties, is to be doing specific things that address intergenerational unfairness.
I also think, and it's very unpopular, I'd be delighted to know what you think of this, I do think because of the pandemic and other reasons, and this won't be popular, that we are now in a country of a lot of people who think the government should wipe their backsides on everything. And I think there has to be...
It won't be the pensioners who think that. They won't be the people.
No, and we have to get to a point of realism, which, you know, at the end of the day, everybody that gets everything, we're all going to pay for it as taxpayers, and there has to be a point where people say, you know, who deserves that, who doesn't? But actually, however hard it sounds, you're going to have to make cuts, you're going to have to do your bit. And that's not an easy thing to say when people are struggling, but it is not an unlimited pot. We are skint.
Boris Johnson today, he stood up in the Commons and spoke about fiscal firepower. I was like, what's this firepower? We're monumentally in debt and getting in more debt. We don't have fiscal firepower. We have things that we can do and we can deploy them judiciously. But this is all money that's taking us further into debt.
Firepower's an odd phrase when you're talking about heating or eating, isn't it? Firing what?
Yes,
what a strange one. Sometimes you wonder what his speechwriter's on, don't you?